This is If My People Bible reading number 100, part 194, the book of Luke, Dr. Luke. And this was written on or about 60 to 61 AD. And it follows in line with our Bible after the book of Romans. And after Luke, by the way, comes Ephesians. Just give you a heads up when we finish Luke, go to Ephesians, and that's where we'll be next. Luke's a doctor, very detailed, so listen to what he says. He starts off with chapter 1, verse 1. Many have undertaken to draw up, notice the word many. Many have undertaken to draw up an account of the things that have been fulfilled among us. Another one of the Gospels was Matthew, Mark, and John. Now, John wasn't written until much, much later, but Luke is mentioning that a number of people have taken things up. So, just as they were handed down to us by those who were the first, were eyewitnesses and servants of the word. Therefore, since I myself have carefully investigated everything from the beginning, it seems good also to me to write an orderly account for you. And he does. So, it starts off with Zechariah. And this is a big hint for those who are apologetics. Here comes some facts. In the time of King Herod of Judea, there was a priest named Zechariah who belonged to the priestly division of Abijah. His wife Elizabeth was also a descendant of Aaron. This takes you back to 1 Chronicles 23 and 24. Now, if you go back, and Luke just told you he's undertaken to draw this up, all the details. So he's going to be, if he knows that other people are writing a book, he's going to be even more detailed than anybody else because he's a doctor. That's just, he's kind of lets you know his personality right then and there. So what does he talk about? He brings up a guy named Zechariah. Now, do the other Gospels get in great detail about this? Interesting as we go back to 1 Chronicles. What does that mean? Well, Zechariah was a priest, and he was from Aaron, the tribe of Aaron. So they served in the temple, and they were servants of Yahweh in the temple, and they drew lots. And when they were drawing lots, it means that everybody served in the temple, and it's a rotating basis. So there were a bunch of priests. That way there was also and always a number of priests from all those who were allowed to be in the temple. And they drew lots for the special duties. Now, the special duties are the appointed times, the feasts and the festivals. And there are 3 festivals of gleaning from the fields. The first one is Passover, barley. The second one is 50 days later, Shavuot, Pentecost, the reaping of wheat. And then through the long summer months, there is the Feast of Tabernacles, which is always 14 days after the equinox, fall equinox, for 7 days, and then that's actually another day after that, the 8th day. So there you have the fall feast and the harvest, which is everything else that finishes up, including the fruit from the trees, just as we do in the northern hemisphere. So it mentions Zechariah, and it keeps on going. It talks about that they had no children, and then as you read through there, you're thinking, well, what has this got to do with Yeshua? Well, he spent his time in the temple, and he couldn't leave. He had to stay there. He had to do his duties, and his wife was at home. And after he did his duties, as we're reading through the 1st and 2nd chapter, after he did his duties, he went home, and he was glad to see his wife. Now, he had been notified that he was going to be, and his wife was going to have a child. His wife, thought it was a blessing, and she said, Yahweh has done this for me. She said, in these days, he has shown his favor and taken away my disgrace. So, verse 26, in the 6th month, Elohim sent the messenger Gabriel to Nazareth, a town in Galilee. Now, meaning 6 months, she got pregnant. So things were going pretty fast here. The conversation with Gabriel took place, and 6 months after a pregnancy occurs, she's 6 months pregnant. She gets to meet her cousin, Mary, Miriam, Yeshua's mother, and that would be sometime in late December. And then she knows that she's going to go spend some time with Elizabeth until the child is born, which would be 3 months later. What do you end up with? You end up with a year cycle. When is John born? So nobody on earth without all this, what you're just told by Luke, would know that when Yeshua was born. You can't figure it out. You take away chapter 1 and 2 of the book of Luke, and you're not going to be able to figure it out. You might be able if you're a great Bible student like Paul was, because he had the old covenant down, and he knew about the Abiyah. And so, as a result of that, you add your 6 months, and you end up with the first week, the last week in March, the first week in April, and that would be 5 or 6 BCE. That would be the next Passover. And Miriam, as we find out, which we'll detail in all the Gospels, it's a lot easier now. So she becomes pregnant, and she becomes pregnant in December. And since we know that the first week in April, the last week in March, is your Passover, and she becomes pregnant, add 9 months. That does not equal Christmas. A year later, she found out in the last week of December, but she had a child. And if you look at the star charts and everything else, which you can do, and people who hate Jesus Christ, they hate his guts and they hate God, are the first ones to show you that in 5 and 6 BCE, the Venus and Jupiter was lined up going through the constellation of Virgo and Boots. Virgin woman, Boots, woman with child. And it passed right through the womb of the Virgin. So there's your sign. There's every evidence that you need to know when Yeshua was born, which would be about the 28th, 29th of September, 5 BCE. And that means he, in about 25, 26 AD, not 30 AD, 25, 26 AD, he began his ministry. It also says that in Luke, because Luke says that Yeshua began his ministry when he was about 30 years old. Well, that would be 25, 26 AD, and he did his ministry for 18 months, which we'll be able to show through all 4 Gospels. When you take these 4 Gospels, it's 18 months, not 3 years. Where the 3 years comes from, I just don't know. I've seen all kinds of explanations, but they don't fit based upon what I just told you. It makes perfect sense what I just told you. So, more evidence. Chapter 1, we're not even in chapter 1 yet. Verse 59. On the 8th day they came to circumcise the child. Who's the child? Yochanan, which is John, which means, by the way, Yahweh is gracious. And they were following Torah law. The 8th day. Pay attention to that. And so it says, they came to circumcise the child, and they bore the name after his father, Zechariah. But his mother spoke up and said, no, he is to be called John. Now, mother couldn't go into the temple area because she was unclean. She had to go through She had a male, said she had to go through a 40-day period. So there's a 40-day period. And plus there was the 8th day. So the 8th day, circumcision, and then that's 8th day, and then 32 days later they go back and John's parents offer him, because he's firstborn, they offer him to Yahweh. That is Torah. And that's exactly what happens with Yeshua and his parents. So then as we're reading on in chapter 2, the mother did the same thing. So Yeshua was born in Bethlehem. And as you've read through about Caesar Augustus in chapter 2 here, right at the beginning, in those days Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census. Now pay attention to this. If he issued a decree and he wanted everybody from the entire area, known world of Jerusalem, to come to Jerusalem to register, how could he do that? Well, because of the feasts and festivals, which Caesar was pretty smart. And lo and behold, we know that Yeshua was born during the feast and festival of the fall. So the father and the mother went because Caesar ordered it. And they also were going to feasts and festivals. And they said, well, they were with child. If he didn't want to go, he didn't have to go. It was okay. Moses allowed people another month later to do things and celebrate feasts and festivals if certain things happen to people. They become unclean and all these other things. That's all through the word of the Old Covenant. So following the fact that is an order from Augustus, now the Romans are throwing, Mary and Joseph go. Mary and Joseph, Yaakov, they go. So they go. And it's the fall feast. And so they register and they have a child. And they go to Bethlehem because that's the Davidic line. That's the family of where they fell from. And you have to register at your location of where your family come from, which the hometown is Bethlehem. So yes, that is true. But it gets better. It gets a whole lot better right here in Luke. When you read exactly what's written, don't listen to what the institutionalized pastors and all those out there and that talking Jesus all the time. They have no clue what they're talking about. Just read the word. And what does the word tell you? This will be a sign to you. That's verse 12. You will find a baby wrapped in cloth and lying in a manger. Now, who's that for? The whole conversation is about to who? It's to the shepherds. Doesn't say anything about Magi, does it? And of course it doesn't say 3 Magi because there's no such thing. That's made up. Where does all that come from? Well, I was told at least by 20 or 30 or 50 Bible school teachers, well, that's because they brought gold, incense, and myrrh. 1, 2, 3. Each one had one little jar, and they carried it all the way from Iraq. And so it must have been 3. And it becomes 3. So that's a lie. There could have been 5, 10, 15, 20. We don't know how many Magi came. But we know the Magi came what? We know that they came, reading the 4 Gospels, we know they came to the home, Home, not a Sukkot, and not a place where donkeys and other animals live in a stable. Not even close. So now that we know that that is totally different than what you're being taught, you just keep reading. The shepherds went home, returned, they were glorifying, everything was fantastic. Verse 21, here we go. On the 8th day, when it was time to circumcise Yeshua, he was named Yeshua, the name the messenger had given him before he conceived. The messenger said he is to be the salvation of the world, not to be the son of Zeus, not Jesus, the son of Zeus, not. He is to be salvation, Yeshua. And so we're going to leave it there. Just swallow that a little bit and think about it, because it gets even better. See you at the next recording.